Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast, State of the Balance, with me, your host, Imperial Dane, here to provide you with some thoughts on the state of the balance, and perhaps also some thoughts on what players are playing at the moment. I mean, overall, this, we sort of had some time there after the big patch was announced and released, and we got another one coming up. So, I mean, there's obviously some things that are probably changing as well as, in the shorter term as well. But, there's nonetheless, been some noticeable changes here and there in terms of plays, strategies, and sort of the actual sort of chances of different armies of winning. So, I mean, overall, it's progressing in the right direction. So, let's sort of start out with the Americans. I mean, from the Americans, I mean, there's been a slight increase in variety. Less few players just going straight for the captain, a bit more lieutenant play. Some players, otherwise, for the most part, are still sticking to what works, which is get a bunch of riflemen, beat your opponent clueless, and then rush out to Stuart because it's still kind of good. Go for mortars, maybe BARs, and that. So, I mean, there's not really sort of much in the core American strategy that's for the most part has really changed. I mean, the riflemen are still really, really, really good, which really means they don't have to change that much for the most part, which again sort of then some things there. I mean, heavy cavalry is still the most popular. I mean, we're still seeing more rifle company again. There's some slight increase in sort of play styles there, but I mean, there's not really sort of much necessity for the Americans to change unless there's some external forces change them. Either if stuff gets nerfed or something gets made better, sort of threaten them more directly. At the moment, I sort of think is sort of the real thing there. I mean, they didn't fix the mortar properly as well. I'd say again, they just reduced its accuracy, and while that's going to make it less oppressive, the problem is it still is really, really good at hitting things, and now it's even faster to get out there, which makes it really difficult to counter mortar it as well. So, I mean, that basically means American mortar can move up there, knock out your mortar, and if your mortar tries to counter it, it can just easily get out of the way. So, I'm not really a huge fan of that sort of thing. I mean, really, it's just there to support versus machine guns and likes, and that doesn't mean it needs to be able to sort of shoot accurately. It should just be able to deploy smoke, maybe provide a bit of support, but, not just accurately hit machine guns, infantry, and so on that directly out on the head and just murder it, which is basically what the American mortar does now. So that one still needs to be nerfed. I mean, they can give the range back for all I care. They just need to fix the accuracy, which was the main issue in the first place with the bloody thing. Beyond that, with the Americans, again, it's harder to say. I mean, if they make the Wehrmacht late game better, the heavy Panzer Corps, there might be some more threats, so you just prevent them from just going heavy cavalry all the time and just calling in Pershings. But again, there are more players relying on Shermans and the likes as well, so it's not obviously that bad. And again, there's some other changes. They might not be as necessary for the Americans because, again, there might be something sort of more directly threaten them from just going straight for the Pershing, which is sort of the main issue at the moment. There's not really much of an actual punishment, and of course, the overall issue might just be, again, heavy call-ins just, need to be teched and, tied into tech. That could certainly also do the trick there. So that is one thing there. But overall, again, there is some increase in the Americans in terms of strategy, but overall, they're still largely playing the same. Again, there might be something down the road, but for now, nothing really huge, to be honest. I mean, it's not really been the earth shaker, so I'm not thinking, of course, that's probably caused some plummeting, play rates, because, again, they can now sort of be dealt with more efficiently by Wehrmacht and Oberkommando West. So, I mean, obviously, it's not because, they're just having all easy time, but of course, that's probably giving them some of the headaches, because they're just sticking to the usual strategies. And for example, the Wehrmacht now has some more efficient tools for actually dealing with them. So again, and it's not all bad. Moving on to the Soviets, they seem, I think, in a pretty good spot. Again, we sort of got more in strategies, got more penal trooper strategies. Guard spam is less there, but still some use guardsmen. There's all just been, sort of greater variety of things, sort of strategies from the Soviets, more variety in doctrines as well. So, I mean, overall, I'm liking that. With the maximum nerf coming as well there, I think, the Soviets should be overall not much of a problem. In fact, I think it should be in a very good spot overall. For the most part, there might of course be some stuff they needed for the late game as well for the Soviets to ensure it doesn't become too linear for them as well. Maybe toss in some upgrades in the mechanized armor Campanea, maybe some abilities there, for example, for the conscripts to get light machine guns or something like that, or maybe access to regular grenades. I mean, those are some options that sort of could consider for the conscripts that way to sort of give them a bit more oomph late game, if you will, but at the same time, a manner that doesn't just involve them just, swarming huge waves at you either, because that's just going to defeat the purpose. But some thoughts that could be sort of made for the later game as well. Moving on to the Brits, well, nothing's really changed there. I mean, the bigger change will come in the next patch, but overall, there's not been, I think, really huge sort of change in British strategy. It's sort of the same stuff as usual in a sense. I mean, they still need to look at the emplacements, and I really think the issue there is just they need to reduce brace to like 10 seconds, not 30 seconds, because 30 seconds in a fight is ages. They need to reduce it to 10 seconds. That's a lot more manageable, I think, time schedule, you know, again, and doesn't, you know, reward poor play, which is currently what 30 seconds do. I mean, you can place it where you can, as long as you just blob around the emplacement. Then, I mean, you can usually see off most threats because they can't just deal with it fast enough. So I rather think reducing it to 10 seconds, you know, would do the trick there overall for the British. And of course, just, you know, not reward them placing wherever the bloody hell they want it, which is what it currently does at the moment. Obviously, the Brits are getting a lot of nerfs with the upcoming patch, so there's less to say there. The comments we fixed Cromwell's and so on, their sap's a bit better, so I mean, there's less to talk about there. I really think they need to look into bracing for the emplacements. When they do that, I think that's going to be, again, also a lot more manageable. Moving on to the Axis, Oberkommando is clearly looking to be the new bugbear. Apparently, all of the light vehicles and tanks have rather kept them in check, but now without those, in particular, it looks like the Volksgun is becoming rather dominant in a weird way. Basically, they're sort of just being encouraged to spam and block because they're not very good in small numbers. So you get a bunch of them, but then once they get the veterancy, they become really, really good, which is sort of a bit weird and not really, again, encouraging. So I think overall there, what you need to do with the Oberkommando is just, well, reduce the received accuracy bonuses, partly, again, just normally, but also when they're out in the bloody open, for starters, and then slightly, you know, work to increase the damage output. That way, you know, they're not encouraged to run out in the open, which is, again, always something I say is a bad idea. And similarly, they can also do a bit more damage, also encourage maybe just not run head on, but actually try and flank, you know, instead of just, again, head on assaults. Light infantry gun, by the way, still needs bloody smoke. Very much still needs bloody smoke. I might also consider just changing about that assault rifle upgrade for the Volksgrenadiers in a way. I mean, it's a theoretical, I mean, it's a good thing they have an upgrade there. The problem is how it works. It's just a straight up upgrade, which I don't think is a really grand idea. I mean, my personal suggestion would probably be to, if possible, make the burst an ability. You know, it sort of does some damage that way, but otherwise just single shots, so even then counts as a slight upgrade, sort of range firepower, doesn't just make them better at all ranges. And then sort of the burst only makes them better up close. That way they sort of have a bit more flexibility, but it's not just, you know, you can just sort of blow up and walk straight at your opponent. It sort of requires a bit more brains. I mean, they couldn't just make, you know, a full assault rifle upgrade for everyone. Again, they'll just function like normal rifles, but then again, you just sort of at times burst out, have a chance to do more damage, but then at the same time, it'll work like tactical advance. That is, it makes them even easier to kill. So that way, you increase the firepower, you make the upgrade worthwhile, but it doesn't become a no-brainer upgrade, which is what we don't like. We don't like no-brainer upgrades. People should always have to, I think, to an extent, think about their upgrades in some way. And currently, I think the assault rifle upgrade for the Volksgrenadiers does not encourage, you know, thinking, which is what needs to be looked at. So if they can do that, I think they'll do a lot there as well, sort of keep them a bit more checked. Of course, then there are other elements of the Oberkommando that needs to be looked at, like some of the pricings as well, and maybe make the Panzer IV a bit cheaper and some other bits here. And the flak half track I still think needs to be better for his infantry. They still need to fix the flak emplacement for the Oberkommando as well. Plus, Fallschirmjägers could probably also do with a look at. I'd probably suggest just removing the FT-42 as an initial upgrade, have them start at a sort of pretty good rifleman, and then have the FT-42s as an upgrade to that way increase their firepower. I think that will work out a lot better for the Fallschirmjäger on top of that. I think that will work out a lot bloody better for them. So, I mean, that's sort of rather that there. I think overall there's probably a lot more things need to be added, and I still think they need to just give the Oberkommando a proper half-track, then take away the reinforcement from the battle group headquarters, because again, for an aggressive faction, then giving them something that's straight out of the Brits from Companies 1, which is just hit big trucks that can just reinforce them at the front line, is just perplexing. Just give them a bloody half-track, you know, take the infantry half-track, make the infantry half-track bit an upgrade, and then just have a regular half-track. That should do the trick for the Oberkommando West. Again, that should make them a more aggressive faction. Again, with the folks going to change as well, then they actually sort of make sense in aggressive faction, and they can't just camp about. So, if they were to do that, I think that again make the Oberkommando sort of fit in more with the idea of an aggressive faction, and also just less campy, grindy stuff. Also, I think they just need to tone down all the received accuracy upgrades to get via veterancy in general. Just focus more on just offensive firepower. You don't make infantry bulletproof. Just don't. Unless it's elite infantry, to an extent you can sort of make them, but still overall should, you know, focus on making them better able to kill stuff. Otherwise, you just sort of encourage blobbing, which is never good. And just bad tactics, really. Again, you should never encourage infantry to run around out in the open. That's it. That's really my apology on that subject matter. And then finally the Wehrmacht. The Wehrmacht overall, I think, is in a much better position. The only issue is still Wehrmacht Tier 4 is still kinda rubbish. I mean, you're just not really encouraged or rewarded for going for it still, and that I think still needs to be looked at. And of course the trick is, how on earth do you do that? I think in part the trick is to just partly make the building itself more attractive, you know, give the heavy panzer corps some additional things it can do. I mean, just say adding self-repair, you know, repair pioneers to it automatically, I think would do a lot, because one of the issues with the amount, of course, having to take all the waste, it takes a lot more management, and you're just not rewarded for all that management you have to put into compared to the other armies. When they say compared to the Americans, again, they just press a button. Oh, hey, I've got, you know, access to tanks now. With the Germans, you have to tech up, bring back some pioneers, get them to build the stuff, and again, that's a lot more steps than the other way. A lot more steps. That's at least 3 to 4 steps more than what the Americans do, which again is just press a button. So in that regard, I think they should again just stuff they can that way and relieve pressure off the Wehrmacht players sort of mentally would be good. Again, stuff like repair pioneers, I think could, you know, on the heavy panzer corps do a lot there to just sort of slightly reward them, incentivize them towards going for, you know, bloody Tier 4. Since again, they're pretty much the only faction with an actual Tier 4 that involves, you know, 4 tiers. Which is, you know, kind of silly at this point. Again, there's just not much more of an actual reward involved. I would also, you know, somehow give the Wehrmacht some additional benefits. My suggestion at this point would probably be to just say, take the Veteran 2 bonuses, there's the armoured skirts, make them individual upgrades for the armour pieces, have them cryo munitions, give them some better Veteran 2 bonus, like, say, you know, better accuracy, rate of fire, suppression of the machine guns, you name it. That way, you know, you can sort of quickly get to the part where they're more survivable. That way, the pricing actually kind of makes more sense, you know. As long as you also keep the armoured skirts sort of reasonably well priced, you know. Then all of a sudden, a Panzer IV unit can suddenly become, you know, armoured up there at 125-minute fuel. Kind of makes more sense. If you have to pay for munitions for it, it still sort of makes more sense. Similarly, the Wehrmacht Panther would then suddenly also make a lot more sense if you could actually buy it its bloody armoured skirts. Right? I mean, that would suddenly make all of these things a lot more attractive and functional. So I really think that's what they need to do. They just need to make the armoured skirts separately purgeable for the Wehrmacht tanks. I think that would do a lot to make them, you know, a lot more functional. Particularly because the Wehrmacht skirts upgrade for the Stug anyways is not really that good. So I mean, giving it a better Veteran 2 bonus instead, I think would do a lot to just, you know, give it a bit more reason there. So I think that would sort of, again, do a lot more for the Wehrmacht armour, give it a bit more reason to stand out, and, you know, free up other things. So again, I think that would be really good, and would again also then make the Panther more attractive. You can then quickly upgrade it with armoured skirts, and then it has something else better at Veteran 2. Maybe it just gets better at hitting targets on the move, or just gets better accuracy in the first place. I mean, I'd probably make people like the Panther a lot more as well if it could hit its targets. So, I mean, those are some options there. And then maybe, just maybe toss in a few extra infantry upgrades or just some sort of analogue to the Obersoldaten. Maybe call them Panzer Pioneers. Have them be a 4-man infantry corps with some, I don't know, really good rifles that can be an upgrade with submachine guns, grenades, and stuff like that. You know, assault troops there, they could sort of get a different upgrade with, I don't know, light machine guns, you know. Just give them the skins from the Sturmofficer or something like that, and, you know, presto changeo, you got yourself some Panzer Pioneers. I mean, that way, there'd also be more incentive towards going for it, because, again, it's very much sort of very long road you have to go for it, and then you basically don't get anything that makes up for it. So if they can do that, I think that'll help make the Wehrmacht Tier 4 better. But again, by also changing up the armoured skirts, I think, again, they could also give Wehrmacht armour some more incentive towards, you know, being a bit better. Bit more, you know, actually trying to preserve it as well, and just, you know, I don't know, well, also just change things up a bit, you know, give them some better veterans. That way they can also just, you know, stand up on their own better. I think, again, that would do a lot for the Wehrmacht, help them stand out, and just, you know, create some more interesting play. Plus, it might also help punish players who just, you know, rush for the big armour versus the Wehrmacht, you know, like, oh, hey, I'm just going to go for the Pershing. Well, tough luck. Now I've got, you know, up-armoured Panzer IVs and Stugs. Have fun with that, mate. I mean, so that's, I think, sort of what should be looked at there towards, you know, for the Wehrmacht as well. But again, again, it's just the later end. Again, there's some issues. I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be. Again, partly because again the Allies can't press them so hard early on, but you know, I think there's some room there for some more interesting choices. And just again something to press the opponent a bit more, and again make tier 4 more viable, which is really what I want. You know, I want tier 4 to be, you know, actually bloody viable, which again is currently what it's not really most of the time. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't, subscribe, like, share, comment. You know, tell your friends about it. Tell Relic if you got friends there. You know, to like, Dane's got some really good ideas about that one. Purchasable armored skirts. I've been saying that for years. He just read my mind there. He just read my mind. He is my god. I've got a shrine to him at the corner of my house. The official one, by the way. You know, the official Imperial Dane Propaganda Shrine. Purchasable, you know, somewhere, right? You know, you get the idea. Talk about it, you know, make some fuss. So, this is Imperial Dane signing off again. Hope you enjoyed it. Liked it, agreed with my thoughts, or just found them enlightening. If you did, you know, let me know. This is Imperial Dane signing off, and see you all. Cheers.